so you can sit between them.
Yes.
Okay. We'll just go in 1 more minute to get ready. So well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the launch of the International Protocol on the Documentation and Investigation of Sexual Violence in Conflict, something I believe will be an extremely important document in the world. This protocol is the first of its kind, and we hope it will play a vital role in shattering the culture of impunity for sexual violence in conflict. This impunity is a major factor in why these crimes continue. Up to 50,000 women were victims of sexual violence during the war in Bosnia, but only just over 60 people have ever been successfully prosecuted for it. From Central African Republic to Sudan to Syria, untold thousands of rapes have gone entirely unpunished. We know that one of the primary reasons for the lack of prosecutions for sexual violence in conflict is the difficulty of gathering evidence that can stand up in court, and the trauma and the stigma faced by survivors in the process. This protocol is designed to overcome these fundamental barriers, and we are determined to ensure that prosecutors, police forces, peacekeepers, and civil society on the front line in this struggle know how best to document and investigate sexual violence in conflict so that perpetrators can be successfully prosecuted. This protocol sets out in detail how to interview survivors and witnesses, how to secure physical evidence, how to work with medics and lawyers so that survivors can be confident that the facts are on their side. It shows how to protect survivors and to support them at every stage so that they don't suffer more trauma or risk being attacked for courageously taking a stand. It has been written to help all those who might be involved in documenting and investigating sexual violence in conflict, from community activists to heads of police to international organizations who work in conflict-affected areas. It contains the distilled wisdom of more than 200 renowned experts, investigators, survivors, and organizations representing years of accumulated experience and expertise. We want it to be a reference point, setting standards for governments, for international organizations, and civil society across the world. If all countries applied these standards, then it will greatly strengthen prosecutions for rape in conflict and help to secure a dramatic increase in successful convictions. That is why, as the United Kingdom, our focus will firmly be on the implementation of this protocol. We will be translating it into multiple languages. We will be disseminating it worldwide through our huge diplomatic network, and in partnership with international institutions, we will be supporting those organizations and activists putting it to use where it is needed most in places affected by conflict and instability. We will ask all the governments and organizations represented at this summit to join this effort, to consider how they can use it in their countries, in their training for police or peacekeepers, in their work with civil society, and in development programs overseas. And we will do everything we can across the world to support them. Of course, the strongest evidence in the world will not bring justice if prosecutors are not prepared to prosecute, or if police allow perpetrators to walk free. The courage of survivors and activists must now be matched by the determination of governments. And that is why this summit aims to galvanize the international community into action, and it's why the United Kingdom will do its utmost to ensure the momentum that we build here is harnessed and accelerated in the future. Ultimately, however, it is the patient and tireless efforts of people on the ground in conflict-affected states that will tip the balance against impunity. It is their investigations that will bring perpetrators to justice one by one and send the message that war zone sexual violence will not go unpunished. It is their work that will deter armed men from ordering or committing rape in future wars. So this protocol is for them. It is for many of you in this room, and I hope it will be a crucial support to all of you all across the world. And now we would like to show you a short film which tells you more about the protocol. Thank you.
In the context of armed conflict and in the context of mass atrocities, sexual violence is very pervasive. And yet, for those people who survive sexual violence crimes, they are usually denied access to justice for a wide variety of reasons.
The International Protocol is a set of basic standards of best practice on how to document sexual violence as an international crime. The protocol does this really by setting out guidelines on how to recognize sexual violence as an international crime and what to do to document sexual violence in a way that is both effective and gathers the right kind of information, but critically is protective of the rights of survivors and their ability to access genuine justice. So the protocol covers three key aspects. One is, how do you recognize sexual violence as an international crime? The second is, how do you document sexual violence in a way that does no harm to survivors? So how do you collect this information in the most protective way possible? And then the third is, what methodology should you actually employ to document these crimes? You know, what documentation looks like in practice, in a mission, when you're out in the field.
The protocol is intended to be a tool for any practitioner who is faced with information about crimes of sexual violence. And it can be a medical practitioner who's the first responder in a situation on the ground. It can be law enforcement, whether international, criminal investigators, or domestic police. They can be human rights defenders, civil society organizations, prosecutors, lawyers, etc., all relating to both national and international practitioners.
But really, it's a tool that can be very useful for anybody that is facing the challenge of documenting sexual violence in conflict. People can identify their particular line of work in the protocol and decide to use part of it or to use all of it as part of their methodology. The protocol has been developed collaboratively. I think from the beginning it was clear that we needed to involve a lot of different experts in this process. We have a core group of experts from the international courts, national and international prosecutors, NGOs, UN agencies from various sectors. Also, we didn't want to just limit the consultation to those people who can be in London and Geneva and The Hague. So we developed a whole series of consultations at the field level because, you know, critically they're the ones that are going to use it. We did a series of field tests in the Congo, in Bosnia, also in Uganda and in Colombia.
After a period of engagement with practitioners, it became clear that actually, because they recognised their own work in the protocol, I think they were much more genuinely supportive of it. We received a lot of very positive feedback and some constructive suggestions about how to improve the protocol. One is that we really need to ensure that while we're writing a set of international guidelines, that it's careful to be aligned with national and regional policy and so forth. The second really was around questions of security and safety for practitioners working to support sexual violence victims. and recognizing that there are things that they can do to improve their own safety and security, one of which is around greater networking.
I think the most difficult part about the process has been trying to coordinate the views of so many experts, but it's also been really rewarding as a process because it's forced all of us from different sectors to really think about the sort of misconceptions that we had about what is best practice and what are our expectations of survivor behavior and what are survivors' expectations of how to access justice. And that's one of the key things I think of the protocol. It's not just to develop a methodology that can be used as a practical tool, but also that it sort of creates the basis for an ongoing discussion and becomes a tool that we can use to advocate for some changes in some of the things that we've identified as problematic in our field.
This is a tool that's really required. I mean, improving investigation and documentation will start to address questions of impunity in the justice system, there's no doubt. But the other thing that's really important, I think, about the protocol is that as a process of engagement and consultation, it's really raised awareness of these issues amongst a broader audience, and we've been part of a broader conversation about what needs to be done to address impunity for sexual violence crimes, and I think the protocol and its subsequent implementation offers an opportunity to continue to have that conversation.
So now you're well informed about the protocol, and I want to add to the case for this protocol to invite Kolbasia Hausoon of Survivors Speak Out to address us now. Kolbasia.
Good afternoon. My name is Kolbasia, and I am a co-founder and a coordinator of the Survivors Speak Out. It's a survivor-led network of torture who came to seek safety in the UK. And the charity Freedom from Torture helped us to find our voice again. And now the charity support our work speaking out for the right of survivors worldwide. When the Survivors Speak Out were invited to review the protocol, we were delighted because it showed us that survivors are no longer being seen as victims and only listened to when telling their personal testimony. It showed us that survivors are finally being recognized as a vital voice in shaping durable solutions. Let's put everything into context. This protocol asks survivors of sexual violence and conflict to speak out about the most unspeakable experience. It asks us to risk re-traumatization and our recovery process. It asks us to risk stigma, forced displacement, retaliation, arrest, punishment, and rejection for ourselves, our family, and our community. As survivors, we have experienced horrendous ordeal at the hand of those who were supposed to protect us. And this protocol asks us to hope and trust in justice and the future again. So on behalf of all survivors worldwide, to you here today, experts, ministers, state officials, please, while you are trying hard to make the world a better place, while you are trying to bring us justice, please don't forget the protection that survivors need to participate in this process. That's why we hope that we have played our part in creating a protocol that not only do not cause harm, but also make speaking out to achieve justice the empowering experience it should be for survivors. One which enables us to look into the mirror and see the advocate, the lawyers, the doctors, the farmers, the entrepreneurs, the wife, husband, child that we were. We all know that this protocol is only a first step, but it is a significant one, and it can give more survivors hope of achieving justice, and it can give us hope to keep moving forward to ending sexual violence in conflict. The true test of this protocol is how many practitioners find it guided and useful, how many survivors feel safe enough to give evidence about what has happened to them, and ultimately in how many survivors it enables to access justice, how many perpetrators are successfully persecuted. We welcome the assurance that this is only a living document. The most important thing for us is that what happens next is to involve survivors. We hope to continue our engagement, but our biggest hope is for the involvement of many more survivors around the world, and there's organizations that support them. Only by survivors working together with practitioners, states, we can shift the shame and stigma from survivor to perpetrator and end sexual violence in conflict. Thank you, and God bless you.
I'd like to thank Kolbasa and Survivors Speak Out for their work in every respect, but also because this now means that it is survivors who are contributing to the work that we are doing in making sure the world has the answers to these terrible crimes. And now I want to invite as our final speaker for this event someone else who does so much to make sure we can deal with the world's terrible crimes. My co-host of this entire summit and co-founder of the Preventing Sexual Violence Initiative, the Special Envoy of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Angelina Jolie.
Hello. I have met survivors of war zone rape around the world, and almost without exception, they ask for one thing: justice. The right to be accepted and not shunned by society, the right to long-term economic and health support, and above all, the right to see their attackers held accountable in a court of law. Because war zone rape is not a lesser crime, it is a crime against humanity. Today, these rights are denied to millions of survivors around the world. The number of convictions for war zone sexual rape is pitifully small. People who rape innocent women, men, and children during conflict assume that they will simply get away with it, because they have. The few cases that are brought forward are often thrown out because of lack of evidence, despite the testimonies from brave survivors. This is an intolerable situation. That is why, at the heart of this campaign, we are calling for an end to impunity. The perpetrators have to know that even during conflict, evidence is being collected, and it will be used against them. They have to know that when peace agreements are made, there will be no amnesty for rape, and that if they commit these crimes, they will bear the stigma and punishment, no matter how long it takes. We all know how hard it is to secure convictions for rape, even in stable democratic countries. So we have to work even harder to make justice possible in fragile countries. And that is the purpose of this protocol. It is an essential document, and I am so grateful to the hundreds of experts and survivors who have played their part in drafting it. The Foreign Secretary and I are determined to work to ensure that it is implemented, and we will be asking all the governments coming to the summit tomorrow to adopt the protocol and back it fully. As a part of the next stage of the campaign, we will follow up on how it's implemented and what more still needs to be done. I hope that by all of us working together, we can support survivors for the long but not impossible road to justice, and finally, really, truly end impunity. Thank you very much.
So there it is, the international protocol. As Angelina Jolie has just said, we will be asking all the governments that come here to the summit tomorrow to implement this protocol, to make full use of it, but we need your support in making sure that they do that and that they do it rigorously over the coming months and years. So let us now make sure that all over the world, the international protocol on the documentation and investigation of sexual violence in conflict is used and implemented and makes an enormous difference to what is happening around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.